At the beginning of this year, we were promised 5 new crossovers from Mazda, and we've already seen 2, the CX-50 and the CX-60, which is just now making its way to new owners. A recent release of new spy shots from California has us wondering, could this be the 3rd? We're going to jump in on this Mazda Crossover update and break down these photos to find out, is it the CX-70 or the CX-90? So, stay tuned.
More car vids. More car vids.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jonathan Sewell Sales at Mitchell Mazda on the Boulevard at Enterprise, and I'm always excited about new Mazdas, especially Mazda Crossover updates. So we're going to jump into these photos in just a minute, but first, thank you to the FastlaneCar.com, who was the first to share these, and it's through their community that a loyal reader actually submitted these to them or shared them with them. And ironically, it's the same reader, I believe his name is Igor, who identified the now known CX-50 on this same freeway in California about a year ago. Good job, Igor, and glad that we have these photos available. So let's get started and jump on in. TFL is calling this the CX-70 for a couple of reasons. The first thing that we'll notice, though, by looking at this photo is there seems to be more metal behind the rear wheel, and how the camouflage is overlaid makes it look like a different geometrical shape of the rear hatch. So it's a little bit more boxy instead of round on how it appears here. The CX-60 to me looks more like the CX-5 as far as a very round back end, where this one looks a little boxy or flat in the back there, which could mean more cargo, could mean also a third row seat. This could be the CX-90 in my opinion. While we're looking back here though, a couple of differences that you'll notice. This one does have a drop hitch mounted, which makes sense if this is going to be the plug-in hybrid or the inline 6-cylinder, because you want to do a little bit more towing, and we know that there'll be a little more towing capacity available on a larger vehicle. The other thing that you'll notice is under this rear bumper, I don't see those quad exhaust tips. So whether this whole back end is different or they just have them, I wouldn't expect them to be covered up, but maybe they just don't have this vehicle dressed out with those exhaust tips yet. The question that I have here also, and we'll look at another shot in just a minute, is what's going on in the back here with this black flap or covering. Is that hiding some extra glass that would be the window for a third row seat? Because that looks a little different, a little more unique than the CX-60. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the second one here. Now this one could be distorted because of a cell phone camera, whether it's a wide angle or just the position, trying to get as much of the vehicle as they came to a stop is what it appears to. So it does look a little stretched. But one thing I do want you to notice is that there seems to be a lot more metal, again, on this side angle, as best as we can tell, from the behind the rear wheel. TFL and I agree that the wheelbase seems to be very similar to the CX-60. And let's just take a time out for a minute and cover this about the new crossovers. Just to remind you, the CX-60 and CX-80 wheelbases, powertrains are going to be very much the same. It's just accommodating the cargo and third row seat necessity or space necessity for those features. But both of those are going to be what they call a narrow-bodied crossover. The CX-70 and CX-90 are going to be a wide body crossover, and of course the same rules apply, same powertrains, same wheelbase, but the CX-90 and CX-80 will be a little bit longer because of the third row seat and the need for cargo behind the third row seat. Now there's also a question here about the wheels. I was trying to go back and look at all the equipment on the CX-60 and see what wheels they are, but what I'm seeing here, I'll zoom in on those. What I'm seeing here are Carbon Edition wheels. And if they're not Carbon Edition wheels, obviously they're probably painted to obscure those views there. But you can see around the edges of the wheel, these are the previous Grand Touring wheels, which is the same style as the Carbon Edition CX-5 wheel. Again, whether it's just to be camouflaged or just some spare parts they had laying around. Lastly, if you look at this, another conversation that TFL had about this being the CX-70 is how you can see up here as I zoom in the second row seats almost in line or behind the C-pillar. And the C-pillar here is all blacked out, no camouflage on it. However, that leads me to believe that those seats would just be adjustable on a rail, much like the CX-9 now, so you can slide them up or slide them back. However, why do they have so much space behind those second row seats? And why is it, again, another camouflage which could be on, I don't think it's going to be a D-pillar, but why do they have that camouflage going down and then some black? I don't think that it would be like the Mazda 3 hatchback, a wide D-pillar there, but it just looks kind of awkward, and camouflaged vehicle is to be obscure, so that could be the case also. But I think this is probably a third row vehicle. And again, the reason that I'm sticking to that this is the CX-90 is because we know Mazda has said that the CX-90 is coming first in the US, so why would they have the CX-70 on the road instead of the CX-90? Especially if this is maybe an inline turbo, inline 6-cylinder turbo, which they're getting some exposure on. That could be why it's camouflaged. That could be why it's hidden. That could be why the wheels are different. That could be why the exhaust tips are not there. And that could be why it's getting some time, because it's a new powertrain that they haven't done the testing on or the release like the plug-in hybrid that is now released in other parts of the world. Well, I'm excited to have these photos, and I've got just a few more comparisons for you. Earlier I mentioned how when I first saw the rear hatch it just looked different, maybe a little more boxy, maybe a little more flat. Here's a comparison between this one and some spy shots or camoed CX-60s from just a few months back. Now, do you remember this photo here, as this was the CX-60 when they first revealed that dual exhaust was going to be non-functional on the one side, and someone happened to see this vehicle kind of approaching them with shots like this of the front, and then they took a left turn and they kind of followed them a little bit. So what I've done is I've flipped this around to get the same angle going down the road as this. And as you can see, even though they're both camouflaged, there's a noticeable difference to me in the hatch or in the back end. Now, yes, of course, to camouflage this, they could have put some extra components in there just to obscure it even more, but I don't think that was the case. I think that this is a different vehicle. Now, the fast lane saying that, hey, the CX-70 could be longer than the CX-60, but I've never really believed that to be the case. I think the CX-60 and 70 are going to be almost identical, except for that difference between the width, and the 80 and the 90 are going to be similar, or identical, except for that narrow body, wide body setup. I think if you look at this, you can see those differences. Going back to that C and D pillar setup there, you can see the large trim piece as I zoom in here on that D pillar before you get to the lift gate, and I don't think that is going to be the same setup on this other one. I know that they've got an extra piece of black there taped on, or whatever the case is. Also, the tail lights look the same. I was hoping that maybe the wider vehicle was going to get a little wider tail lights, but then also as you look, and I know they've got a lot of tape on it, but I'm not sure what that black portion is behind the rear reflector. That could be where the exhaust is going to be. Maybe it's built in more to the bumper than what we see on the CX-60. Well, always excited to have some photos and some new Mazda news to talk about, especially Mazda Crossover updates. Again, remember that the CX-90 is supposed to come first, so TFL is reporting that we may get information on the 70 by the end of the year, but I think it's going to be the 90, and I think that 90 is going to be available to us somewhere around the first quarter or end of the first quarter of 2023, still as a 23 model, so probably be allocation got pushed back. We here on the Boulevard and other Mazda dealers across the country, if we didn't have access in California to the MX-30, we're now getting our chargers and all tools and everything set up to be ready for this electrification. So you will have the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, then you'll have the mild hybrid option in the inline 6 turbo, which will be released later. So plug-in hybrid coming first. I think allocation by the end of the year or the beginning of 23, January, and then seeing those vehicles somewhere around the same time as the CX-50. Later than I want, yes, but I'm just excited that the ball's rolling and excited to see some spy shots, which means that they're getting close. So excited for that. If you have any questions about anything Mazda or specifically these new crossovers, go ahead and drop a comment below, or you can text me at 334-718-0504. I am Jonathan Sewell Sales at Mitchell Mazda on the Boulevard in Enterprise, Alabama, and I'll always keep my ear to the ground for all the latest Mazda news, and I'll see you on the next one.